Let's continue our live coverage right now. Dr. Meir Javan-Afar is joining us. He's an Iran lecturer at Reichman University. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Dr. Meir, what is your initial response to the U.S. Attack on Western Iraq and Syria on these targets, 85 targets plus?
Well, we have to wait and see first and foremost what the extent of the damage is. Because the attack certainly was not a surprise, and I think the Iranians would have moved most of their military hardware away from at least some of those sites. So we really have to wait and see. I think that the main content, the main focus of the attack, the main goal was just to send a message to Iran that we are no longer sitting and watching Iran attack our forces in Iraq and Syria. It was also, I think, the Americans trying to send a message to the Chinese and to the Russians who have been underestimating American firepower. And I think this was also, you could say, a live military exercise by the U.S. Air Force to send a strategic message to its other allies. Is this going to end Iranian attacks against U.S. forces? I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure, to be honest with you. Because to the Iranian regime, its core interest is its own territory, and its own territory was not attacked. It can always find and recruit these Iraqi and Syrian militias. These militias, they bring them from Afghanistan, they bring them the Shia from Pakistan and the Shia in Iraq. Many of them are unemployed. They can rebuild these things. The Iranian drone factories that make these drones and the missile factories that make the missiles that these proxies fired Israel and United States are still churning out the material. They can still send it. I think Mr. Biden is, I don't want to give it too long an answer, but I think Mr. Biden is doing the best he can within the limits.
Right, let's talk about that if we can. Dr. Javan-Afar, let me read you something. This is coming from U.S. Senator Roger Wicker. He is the Republican from Mississippi. He is the leading Republican on the Armed Services Committee. Granted, it's the opposition, if you will, of American politics. And he says, quote now, "Instead of giving the Ayatollah the bloody nose that he deserves, we continue to give him a slap on the wrist. The Biden administration spent nearly a week foolishly telegraphing U.S. intentions to our adversaries, giving them time to relocate and hide." So is this basically a slap on the wrist, or is it a bloody nose?
Look, I think it's more of a strategic messaging. This is more of a messaging within the best that Mr. Biden can do. Are we in Israel disappointed? Yes, we are, because according to foreign news reports, during the Naftali Bennett administration, we even attacked our UAV base in Iran. We attacked, according to that New York Times report, we destroyed at least 100, if not 200 Iranian UAVs in response to an attempted UAV attack drone attack from Iran, which was foiled over the skies of Jordan. So we in Israel, from our point of view, we're saying it's not enough. But I have to be honest with you. I think we cannot just look at this war within the context of a U.S.-Iran war or U.S.-Iran conflict. The United States is simultaneously involved in a huge military alignment, against a huge military alignment by the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians and the North Koreans. The United States knows the Europeans do not have enough ammunition to face Russia. The United States knows that the Chinese actually have more ships than the United States, although they may not be as sophisticated, but they have more ships. The peak number of ships the United States has was in 1987. The American army cannot find enough American soldiers to join it. It has a shortage of manpower. The Royal Navy, on whom the Americans rely to defend against the Houthis and possibly against the Russians, put out of commission, I think, 1 or even 2 warships. They don't have enough sailors. So when we look at this war against Iran, we have to put it into context of the global war that the United States is involved in and the resource shortages that they have, which is why President Biden, he did what he did.
Yeah, but Dr. Javan-Afar, if I can, that what you're basically saying is that the Western world is outnumbered.
Correct.
So there's no winning. The Western world can't win.
no, we have to build more weapons. It's not a question of we can more win or we can win more. I was hoping, for example, that Israel, they were hoping, especially European countries, that Israel would contribute to the weapons buildup because we have a military infrastructure. Their military infrastructure was reduced after the Cold War, but we kept ours. We have the factories. But this war in Gaza has taken out quite a big part of what we intended to export to the European countries so that they can be ready against Russia and China. But now we're going to use it for our own. There's a whole new recalculation of how things are going to be done in this region and in the world because of the shortages that we face. But this does not mean that sooner or later, after the current Gaza war, somebody may start attacking Iran again. This does not mean that. But when it comes to saying, are we ready for a full-on war with Iran, we have to take into consideration the other wars that the United States is involved in, the weakness in the European arsenal, the weakness in the European armies. They want to save their resources for that.
So then how do we prepare, how does we, and I'm saying we meaning Israel and the United States, prepare for what possibly could be a response from Iran?
First and foremost, it's possible that they could attack, they're probably going to attack US bases in Iraq, Syria. Is there a chance they might attack US bases in Saudi Arabia and UAE? Or Bahrain? Chances are there. I would say Saudi Arabia and UAE, the chances are not very high. But in Bahrain, it's possible that they could attack it there. Can I just add one more point?
Please.
Strategically speaking, let's talk strategic, not tactics. Strategically, if you want to address this Iranian issue, this Iranian threat, which is a very serious threat, us in Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu should join President Biden in reforming the PLO and finding a solution for Gaza. Of course, after we've got the hostages back, without a question. But once we've done that, we find a solution for Gaza with the reform PLO, then we will be able to focus on Iran. Because President Biden wants us to focus on Iran. He doesn't want Gaza to become a distraction. It's a distraction now. And until such times that Prime Minister Netanyahu decides to accept the PLO, we're not going to have a strategic solution for Gaza, which means we will not be able to return to focus on Iran. President Biden wants to find a solution for Gaza so that we can join. We will be able to join the Saudis and everybody else in the Middle East to focus on Iran.
Now, I understand that, but that's a strategic. That seems like a long-term fix of a problem that's changing by the hour. I mean, it seems as though everything is happening. The news cycle, not even the news cycle, the military cycle is happening so quick that sounds like a great idea to do for a long horizon. But is that fast enough for what's happening around the world?
I would love to be able to tell you that there should be a stronger response and that the Iranian regime should be punished even more severely. But when you read constantly about the United States is stretched. Ladies and gentlemen, I-24 viewers, the United States is severely stretched. The European armies are stretched. They are playing catch up. All these years, you know how the Hamas fooled us all these years by saying we just want to focus on the Gaza economy, so we look the other way? We know that in Israel. So the Europeans were fooled by the Russians all these years, and the Chinese fooled the United States by saying, we just want to focus on our economy. But meanwhile, they were building a massive weapons arsenal. But we in the West thought that, no, they don't want war. We were fooled. They don't want war. They just want to build an economy. So we put our arms production on a lower pace. We decreased it while they increased it. So we are facing a gap. And we have to take that gap into consideration when we talk about, whether we want a more severe response against Iran or not. And I think this gap played a big part in President Biden's calculation and, of course, his re-election, without doubt.
Dr. Meir Zevanafar, Iranian lecturer for Reichman University. Thanks again for joining us this morning with an analysis. Very important insight. Thank you again.
Thank you.